The Bible sits in an evidence locker in Lower Manhattan. King James Version. Black leather, gold trim, pages yellow with age and human sweat. Inside that Bible, written in pencil on the margins of Psalms, is a 16-digit number. That number unlocks $11 million. The man who wrote it? Frank Lucas. The most dangerous heroin dealer America has ever seen. The man who memorized it? Still breathing behind bars. 43 years and counting. His name is Raymond. And he's never spoken that number out loud. Not to the FBI. Not to the prosecutors. Not even to his own children. Because Frank Lucas taught him one lesson that saved his life. The silent man lives. The loud man dies. It's 1975. Frank Lucas is sitting in a federal interrogation room. The empire is gone. The blue magic pipeline shut down. The millions frozen, but not all of it. $11 million sits in a Swiss account under a name that doesn't exist. A ghost account, opened in 1971 when Frank flew to Geneva with a briefcase full of diamonds and a fake passport. The feds know it exists. They can smell it. But they can't find it. Because Frank Lucas did something nobody expected. He didn't give the account number to his wife. He didn't give it to his brothers. He didn't bury it in a safety deposit box or carve it into a floorboard. He gave it to Raymond. Raymond wasn't a lieutenant. He wasn't an enforcer. He wasn't even blood. He was a driver. A nobody. A kid from Red Hook who kept his mouth shut and his eyes down. And that's exactly why Frank chose him. Everybody wants to be somebody, Frank told him one night in 1972, sitting in the back of a Cadillac on 116th Street. That's why everybody dies. You? You're nobody. That's why you'll live. Frank handed Raymond the Bible that night. Told him to memorize the number written inside. Told him to burn the page after. Raymond memorized it. But he didn't burn the page. And when the feds raided Frank's operation 3 years later, they found the Bible in Raymond's apartment. They saw the number. They knew what it meant. But Raymond? He told them he couldn't read cursive. They didn't believe him. They gave him 20 years for conspiracy. They offered him immunity if he'd unlock the account. He said no. They added another 15 years for obstruction. He said no again. Because Frank Lucas taught him the only rule that matters in this world: loyalty costs everything. But betrayal costs more. Today, Raymond is 71 years old. He's in a federal prison in Pennsylvania. Parole hearing in 2027. The Swiss account, still untouched. The $11 million, still waiting. And the number, still locked inside Raymond's head. This is the story of the last secret of Frank Lucas. The one treasure the feds never found. The one man who chose silence over freedom. Harlem, 1970. Cold morning. Street steam rising from the grates like ghosts of dead ambitions. Cadillacs parked crooked on 116th Street like thrones on asphalt. This wasn't a neighborhood. This was a kingdom. And Frank Lucas owned every corner. Behind smoked glass, the king sits counting his empire. Blue magic flowing from the Golden Triangle straight to the veins of New York. 98% pure heroin selling for half the price of Italian brown. No middlemen, no mafia tax. $1 million a week. Cash, untraceable, unstoppable. But Frank has a problem money can't solve. Trust. He watches his brothers load cash into duffel bags, the country boys arguing over corners like children fighting over toys, his lieutenants whispering in doorways, each one dreaming of his own throne, his wife asking about dinner reservations at the Copa, mink coats, pictures in Jet magazine. Everybody wants to be somebody. Frank learned the truth from Bumpy Johnson 6 months before the old king died. Sitting in the back booth of Small's Paradise, Bumpy told him, the loud man dies first. The quiet man inherits the earth. Frank built his empire on that wisdom. While the Italians threw weddings with 300 guests, Frank stayed invisible. While Nicky Barnes put his face on magazine covers, Frank drove a Ford. But now he needs someone for the ultimate secret. Not a soldier. Not family. Not a friend. Soldiers get ambitious, family gets greedy, friends get jealous. Frank needs a nobody. That's when he sees Raymond. 22 years old. Red Hook dropout, drives for Frank's cousin. Raymond doesn't talk unless spoken to, doesn't ask questions, doesn't repeat what he hears. He's furniture in every room he enters. Background noise, invisible. Frank watches him for 3 months. Studies him. Tests him without Raymond knowing. Frank has people leave cash on car seats. Raymond never touches it. Frank has people ask Raymond about business. Raymond says he doesn't know anything. Someone offers Raymond cocaine at a party. Raymond says no thank you and disappears. The kid is clean. The kid is disciplined. The kid is nobody. One night in October, Frank tells Raymond to pick him up. Drive to the Bronx. Raymond shows up on time, no questions, just drives. They hit the FDIC Drive. Black River to the right, endless and final. Halfway across the Willis Avenue Bridge, Frank pulls out a .38 Special, presses cold steel against the back of Raymond's head. The car jerks slightly, then steadies. "Keep driving," Frank says. Raymond does. "You scared?" Frank asks. "Yes, sir." No shake in the voice, no stutter, honest fear. Frank smiles for the first time in weeks. "If I told you to drive this car into that river right now," Frank says slowly, "no questions, no goodbye, would you do it?" The river glints under streetlights. Black. Final. Raymond could beg, could cry, could swear loyalty, could tell stories about his mother, his dreams, his future. He does none of that. "Yes, sir." No hesitation, no conditions, no negotiation. Frank studies him in the rearview mirror. Not bravado, not stupidity. Acceptance. "Why?" Frank asks. Raymond swallows once. "You paying for the gas, ain't my car." Frank laughs, short, sharp. The gun disappears back into his coat. "The loud man dies," Frank says. "The silent man lives. Remember that." Over the next 6 months, Raymond becomes Frank's shadow. Frank takes him to meetings Raymond shouldn't see, conversations Raymond shouldn't hear, deals Raymond shouldn't know about, testing his memory, testing his discretion, testing his loyalty. Raymond never asks questions, never repeats what he hears, never writes anything down. He passes every test. Then, in March 1971, Frank takes Raymond to an empty church on 135th Street. Stained glass saints watching over sinners. Frank sits in the front pew, pulls out a black leather Bible, King James Version, gold trim. He opens it to Psalm 23. In the margin, written in small pencil, 16 digits. $11 million, Frank says quietly. Swiss bank account. My insurance policy. If this empire falls, that money is my escape. He hands Raymond the Bible. "Memorize this number, then burn the page." Raymond stares at the digits. 30 seconds pass. He closes the Bible. "I have it." Frank stands, walks out, leaves Raymond alone with the book. Raymond opens it again, stares at those 16 digits in the margins of Psalm 23. The valley of the shadow of death. Frank told him to burn the page. Raymond stares at those numbers for 5 full minutes. Then he closes the Bible, puts it in his jacket. He doesn't burn the page. And that decision will cost him everything. Harlem, 1973. The kingdom is fat now, bloated with success, drunk on its own legend. Blue magic flows through the streets like a river of gold. 20 kilos a week. 98% pure. $1 million every 7 days. Cash money. Untraceable and unstoppable. Frank Lucas sits on a throne built from the bones of the Italian pipeline he destroyed. But empires don't fall from outside attacks. They rot from within. The country boys are getting sloppy. Frank's brothers walking down 125th Street like they own the world, and in a way, they do. Matching Cadillacs parked outside the Apollo, mink coats in July heat, gold chains thick as anchor rope swinging from their necks. They're walking billboards advertising federal indictment. Frank calls a meeting at his cousin's brownstone. All the brothers sitting around a table like the Last Supper, counting money and laughing too loud. "You're making us visible," Frank says quietly, the dangerous kind of quiet that makes smart men shut up. His youngest brother laughs, champagne on his breath at 10 in the morning. "We're rich, Frank. What's the point of being rich if nobody knows?" Frank stares at him across the table. The point is staying rich. The point is staying free. The point is staying alive. But they don't listen. Success makes men stupid. Money makes men loud. And loud men die. Raymond stands by the door, invisible as always, watching Frank's jaw tighten. He's seen that look before. It means someone is about to learn a hard lesson. Across town, Nicky Barnes is proving Frank's point in real time. Nicky's doing everything Frank warned against. He's on magazine covers now. The New York Times Magazine calls him Mr. Untouchable. Big smile. Custom suit, gold watch catching camera flash. Frank sees the magazine on a newsstand, buys 3 copies, brings one to Raymond. "Look at this," Frank says, tossing the magazine on the dashboard of Raymond's Ford. Nicky's a dead man. He just doesn't know it yet. Raymond studies the cover, Nicky posing like he won something, like he beat the game. "You put your face on a magazine," Frank continues, "you're telling every cop in America exactly who to hunt. You're begging for a cage." Frank's right. Within 6 months, Nicky gets arrested. Federal conspiracy charges. Life sentence. Every lieutenant he had turns informant. The loud man dies first. But Frank's got bigger problems than Nicky's stupidity. Detective Richie Roberts is building a case. Not a street cop looking for a quick bust, a federal agent. Smart, patient, incorruptible, the most dangerous kind of law. Roberts has wiretaps on half of Harlem. Bank records tracing cash from New York to Bangkok. Informants in every crew. He's following the money like breadcrumbs, getting closer to the gingerbread house every day. Frank feels it coming, can sense the walls closing in like an animal smells storms. So Frank starts moving money, not to local banks, not to safety deposit boxes, overseas. Switzerland. Numbered accounts, ghost identities. $11 million sitting in Geneva under a name that doesn't exist. That account is Frank's parachute, his resurrection plan. If the empire falls, Frank disappears. New passport, new country, new life. Only one person knows how to access it. Raymond. Frank trusts Raymond because Raymond is still nobody, still invisible, still driving the same Ford, still keeping his mouth shut. But then Frank makes one mistake, one moment of vanity that destroys everything. March 8, 1971, Madison Square Garden. Alley versus Frazier, the fight of the century. Every gangster, politician, celebrity, and cop in New York packed under one roof. Frank Lucas walks in wearing a $50,000 chinchilla coat. Floor length. White as fresh snow, impossible to miss. His wife beside him dripping diamonds like a chandelier. They sit ringside, front row, center camera. Every flashbulb in the garden catches them. Raymond watches from 20 feet away, feeling his stomach drop. Watches Frank pose for photos. Watches him shake hands with celebrities. Watches the invisible king make himself visible. The next morning, Detective Richie Roberts sees the photo in the Daily News. He's been chasing a ghost for 3 years. Now he has a face. Roberts cuts out the photo, pins it to his office wall, writes one word underneath, Target. 3 months later, the raids begin. Federal agents hit every Lucas property simultaneously. They arrest Frank's brothers, seize the cars, freeze the accounts, shut down the pipeline. Frank gets arrested at his mansion, handcuffs in front of his children. The invisible king made visible. But Frank doesn't panic, because $11 million sits in Switzerland, untouched, unknown, and only Raymond can access it. June 18, 1975, 6 in the morning. Raymond's Red Hook apartment. Federal agents kick the door off its hinges. They tear the place apart like hungry wolves. In the back of a drawer, wrapped in a sock, they find it. A black leather Bible. The agent opens it, flips to Psalm 23, sees 16 digits written in pencil. He smiles. They just found the treasure map. Federal Building, Manhattan. Room 304. June 18, 1975. Concrete walls painted the color of old teeth. No windows, no clocks, no mercy. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead like trapped insects dying slow deaths. The air tastes like stale coffee and broken dreams. One metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, 1 Bible. Raymond sits handcuffed to cold steel. 24 hours without sleep. 12 hours without food. 6 hours without speaking. He stares at a scratch in the table like it holds the secrets of the universe. Detective Richie Roberts enters, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened like a noose coming undone. He's been hunting ghosts for 3 years. Now he thinks he caught the man holding the treasure map. Roberts sits, opens the Bible. Pages crackle like autumn leaves. He flips to Psalm 23. The Valley of the Shadow of Death. Turns the book so Raymond can see. 16 digits written in faded pencil along the margin. "You know what this is?" Roberts asks. His voice is calm, reasonable, the tone of a man offering salvation. Raymond looks, shakes his head once. $11 million, Roberts says, tapping the page with a chewed fingernail. Frank Lucas's parachute. Swiss bank account. Numbered, untraceable. And you're the only key that fits the lock. Raymond drops his eyes back to the table scratch, says nothing. Roberts leans forward, studies Raymond like a poker player reading tells. You're nobody, Raymond. Not a kingpin, not a killer. Just a driver making $500 a week while Frank made millions. Why protect a man who used you as his insurance policy? The conveyor belt begins. First comes the federal prosecutor. 3-piece suit. Law degree from Harvard. Briefcase full of nightmares. He spreads out papers like tarot cards predicting doom. Conspiracy to distribute narcotics. Money laundering. Obstruction of justice. You're looking at 25 years minimum, the prosecutor says. You'll be 50 when you get out. If you get out. He slides immunity papers across the table. Sign here. Walk out today. New name. New city. New life. Raymond doesn't touch the pen. Next, the ears agent, dead eyes, colder than January wind. He opens folders full of bank records, wire transfers, asset seizures. $11,300,000, he recites. Blood money, poison money, money that destroyed families. Help us take it, and we'll make sure you're compensated. $2 million, tax-free, set for life, still nothing. Then the Swiss banking expert. Perfect accent, expensive cologne. He explains the mechanics like a professor teaching physics. Numbered accounts require 2 keys, he says. The 16-digit code and a verbal passphrase. Without both, even we cannot access it. But with them, instant transfer. Clean money, your money. They offer Raymond everything a poor man dreams of. Freedom, money, protection, a house where nobody knows his name. Then they flip the coin. Threats. Life in prison. Die in a cage. Forgotten. Alone. But Raymond remembers something else. A night in 1972. Back of a Cadillac. Rain on windows, Frank's voice cutting through darkness like a blade. The feds will offer you the world, Frank had said. Freedom, money, new life. They'll make it sound easy, but here's the truth they won't tell you. Rats don't get to enjoy freedom, they get fear. Wake up every day wondering who knows, who's coming, who remembers. They trade one cage for another. Hour 7. Roberts finally loses patience, slams his hand on the table. The Bible jumps. "What are you doing?" Roberts shouts. "You're choosing prison over $11 million? You're choosing Frank Lucas over your own life?" Raymond looks up for the first time, meets Roberts's eyes. "I'm not choosing Frank," Raymond says quietly. "I'm choosing to keep my word." Roberts stares, doesn't understand, can't comprehend someone choosing loyalty over freedom. "Your word? To a drug dealer?" Raymond shakes his head. "To myself." The room goes silent, except for the buzzing lights. They draw up charges. 20 years. Federal prison. No parole. Raymond signs without reading. No hesitation, no regret. As marshals lead him away in handcuffs, Roberts asks one final question. "Did you memorize that number?" Raymond smiles for the first time in 9 hours. Small, genuine. "I can't read cursive." The door slams shut, and Raymond walks into darkness, the richest poor man in America. Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, Pennsylvania. March 1976. Concrete walls painted the color of old teeth. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead like trapped insects dying slow deaths. The air tastes like stale coffee, disinfectant, and 40 years of broken dreams. This isn't a building. It's a tomb for the living. Raymond enters wearing state-issued brown like a man already halfway buried. 28 years old. A nobody from Red Hook. Carrying a king's secret inside his head. They take his clothes, his name, his time. They leave him with a number and a bunk, and the weight of $11 million pressing down on his skull. But secrets don't let you stay invisible. Secrets make you glow in the dark. Word spreads faster than disease through the cell blocks. The quiet new guy from New York knows where Frank Lucas buried his treasure. Swiss account. Numbered. Untouchable. One man holds the key to $11 million. Prison has its own economy. Cigarettes are currency. Protection is a commodity. Information is gold. And Raymond just became a walking Fort Knox. Within a week, they come hunting. First approach is friendly. Old-timer named Marcus slides next to Raymond in the chow hall. Gray beard, dead eyes, tattoos telling stories Raymond doesn't want to hear. "Heard you got something worth protecting," Marcus says, picking at his food. "I can make sure nobody bothers you. Commissary full. Phone calls to your people. Just need a little something in return." Raymond eats his slop in silence. Eyes on his tray. Next comes the Italians. 3 of them corner Raymond in the library between dusty law books and forgotten dreams. They offer him cigarettes, protection from the Aryan Brotherhood, a cut of whatever they recover. 10%, the leader whispers. "We got people on the outside who can move it. Clean money. Your money." Raymond walks away without speaking. Then the Muslims, the Mexicans, the Aryan Brotherhood themselves. Everyone wants a piece of the invisible fortune. Everyone has a plan. Everyone promises Raymond safety, money, respect. Raymond refuses them all with the same 4 words, "I can't help you." When kindness fails, threats begin. Notes slip under his cell door at night like poisonous snakes. "Your mother lives on 4th Street. Nice apartment. Shame if it burned down. Your sister has cute kids. Be a shame if they didn't come home from school." Raymond reads each one, flushes them down the steel toilet. Says nothing, because 40 years ago, Frank Lucas taught him something in the back of a Cadillac. Fear is just another man's opinion of your future. When words don't work, they use fists. Recreation yard. October afternoon. Gray sky pressing down like a concrete lid. Raymond walks laps alone, trying to be invisible. 3 shadows break off from the weight pile and trail him. No warning, no negotiation, just violence. First hit comes from behind. Fist to the ribs, air leaves his body like it's been evicted. Second hit cracks his jaw, white sparks exploding behind his eyes. He goes down on gravel and dirt, boots to his sides, kicks to his back. Where's the money? One hisses between kicks. Say the fucking number. Raymond curls around his broken ribs and says nothing. He tastes blood and dust and his own refusal to break. They break 2 ribs, crack his jaw, leave him bleeding on concrete while guards pretend not to see until it's almost too late. Raymond spends a month in the infirmary, jaw wired shut, ribs wrapped tight. Breathing hurts, eating hurts, existing hurts. But his mouth stays shut. When he heals, they transfer him. New prison, new faces, same curse. Because secrets don't just make you valuable, they make you dangerous. People fear what they can't have. They hate what they can't control. And Raymond controls something worth more than most men's lives. The feds keep coming back like vultures circling a carcass that refuses to die. Every 2 years, different faces, same hunger. Young prosecutor with slick hair and cheap cologne. Frank's empire is gone, Raymond. The money is just sitting there. Help us, and we'll cut your sentence in half. I can't help you. Old agent, tired and gray. Just give us the bank name. We'll do the rest. I don't know anything. Same dance, same song. Same answer. Then comes the news that breaks something inside him. Raymond lies on his bunk listening to prison radio. Static crackles through the speaker like electricity through his brain. The news anchor's voice cuts through the white noise. Drug kingpin Frank Lucas released from federal custody today after serving 5 years of a 70-year sentence. Lucas cooperated extensively with authorities, leading to over 100 convictions of drug dealers and corrupt law enforcement officers. Raymond stares at the concrete ceiling. Frank Lucas, the man who put a gun to his head and preached about silence. The man who said rats don't enjoy freedom. The man who built a religion on loyalty and baptized Raymond in its holy water. He talked, he sang, he ratted out everyone who ever trusted him. Frank is free, walking the streets, breathing fresh air, spending whatever money the feds didn't find. And Raymond is still in a cage. 15 years left to serve for keeping a secret that belonged to a man who had no secrets left. For 3 days, Raymond doesn't eat, doesn't speak, doesn't move, except to breathe. He lies on his bunk replaying that night in the Cadillac, replaying the interrogation room, replaying the moment he chose silence over freedom. He feels like a fool. A pawn sacrificed for a king who flipped the board and walked away laughing. But on the 4th night, clarity comes, cold and hard as prison bars. He remembers Frank's other lesson, the one whispered in that empty church before handing over the Bible. Loyalty isn't about the other person. It's about who you are. It's about looking in the mirror and knowing you didn't break. Raymond sits up in the darkness. He didn't stay silent for Frank. Frank was just a man. Flawed, weak, hypocritical. Raymond stayed silent for Raymond. He proved he was stronger than the system, stronger than the money, stronger than fear, stronger than the man who taught him the rules but couldn't follow them himself. The years crawl by like wounded animals. 1980. 1990. 2000. Raymond becomes a ghost inside the system. He stops taking visitors, stops answering letters, stops hoping for anything except the end of each day. He becomes the old man in the library, reading everything and bothering no one, the invisible man who carries invisible treasure, a legend that inmates whisper about but no longer approach. Until 2015. A guard stops by his cell during afternoon count. "You got a visitor, Ray." "Legal visit." Raymond frowns. He doesn't have a lawyer. His appeals died 20 years ago. The visiting room smells like disinfectant and desperation. Raymond sits at a table, bolted to the floor, hands folded, waiting. A woman enters, mid-50s, expensive suit that can't hide the desperation in her eyes. She carries herself like money and fear had a child. She sits across from him, studies him like an artifact in a museum. "My name is Francine," she says, her voice steady but her hands shaking. "I'm Frank Lucas's daughter. And I need that account number." Federal Correctional Institution, Lewisburg. The visiting room smells like industrial disinfectant and 40 years of broken promises. Metal tables bolted to concrete floors. Plastic chairs that wobble just enough to remind you that nothing here is stable. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead like dying insects trapped in glass coffins. Raymond sits at table 7, 70 years old now. White hair cropped close. Hands folded, knuckles swollen from time and cold concrete. His face is a roadmap of silence, carved with lines that speak of decades spent saying nothing. He wears state-issued gray like a monk's robe, a uniform of chosen poverty. He doesn't expect visitors. He never expects visitors. The outside world forgot Raymond exists 20 years ago. Then she walks in, mid-50s. Expensive suit that probably costs more than Raymond earned in his entire life as a driver, but designer fabric can't hide desperation. It seeps through silk like sweat through skin, radiating from her in waves of barely controlled panic. She sits across from him. No plexiglass barrier, just air, history, and $11 million in Swiss limbo. "My name is Francine Lucas," she says, her voice steady but her hands trembling like autumn leaves. "I'm Frank's daughter." Raymond studies her face. He can see Frank in the curve of her jaw, the hunger in her eyes, the way she holds her shoulders like she's carrying the weight of a fallen empire. The Lucas bloodline runs through her like a river of pride and pain. She opens a manila folder with the reverence of someone handling sacred relics. Photos spill across the metal table. Frank in a hospital bed, oxygen tubes snaking from his nose like technological ivy. Frank in a wheelchair, the king reduced to bones and regret. Frank in a casket. Finally, silent. "He died in 2019, Francine says, her voice cracking like old leather. Heart gave out. Spent his last months in a studio apartment in Newark. Roaches and peeling paint. Not the mansion on the hill. Not the empire. A studio apartment where he died watching game shows and counting pills. Raymond doesn't touch the photos, doesn't reach for the past, just listens like he's been doing for 44 years. "We're drowning," Francine continues, leaning forward. "Legal fees from his cases ate everything. Medical bills from the cancer treatment. Tax liens. And there are debts you can't discharge in bankruptcy. People who don't forget. People who collect interest in blood." She slides another photo across the table. Frank's widow working behind a cash register, gray hair pulled back, name tag crooked. The Queen of Harlem selling lottery tickets for minimum wage. "My mother works retail," Francine whispers, 68 years old, standing on her feet 8 hours a day because Social Security doesn't cover the rent. "My brother drives a cab in Queens. My kids go to public school in a district where half the teachers quit every year." Raymond looks at the photos. Sees the cost of being loud. The price of being visible. The final bill that comes due for every king who forgets he's mortal. "That 11 million could save us," Francine says, her voice rising like a prayer to an absent God. "Could give my children the education my father's choices stole from me. Could let my mother retire with dignity. Could pay back the people he hurt, the families he destroyed." She pulls out letters next. Prison mail from the late 70s, Frank's handwriting in fading blue ink. Envelopes marked return to sender in Raymond's careful script. "He wrote you," she says, "tried to get you to use the money." to let it go, to live. You never answered. 40 years of letters, 40 years of silence. Raymond finally speaks. His voice is gravel dragged across concrete, rough from decades of disuse. Your father didn't give me that number to help his family, he says slowly. Francine blinks. Then why? Why trust a nobody with everything? To teach me a lesson. What lesson could possibly be worth 40 years in a cage? Raymond meets her eyes for the first time. Dark water reflecting nothing. That loyalty is the only thing you own that nobody can take. Francine's face hardens. Desperation transforms into rage like water becoming steam. Loyalty? She laughs, but there's no humor in it. Just disbelief sharp as broken glass. He ratted out everybody. Cops, dealers, friends, enemies. You sat in this cage while he sat on television, doing interviews, writing books, making movies about his life. That's who you're protecting? Raymond shakes his head slowly. I'm not protecting him, he says. I'm protecting my choice. Your choice? Francine hisses. You're choosing pride over people. You're choosing a dead man's secret over living children who need food and shelter and hope. No, Raymond replies quietly. I'm choosing the only thing I have left that's mine. They sit in silence. A guard glances over, then looks away. Just another broken conversation in a room full of them. Another family destroyed by choices made in shadows. Francine gathers the photos, the letters, the evidence of a dynasty's collapse. Her hands shake as she slides them back into the folder. You know what the difference is between you and my father? She asks, standing up. Raymond waits. He walked out of prison, she says. He got to hold his grandchildren. He got to breathe fresh air. He got to die in a bed instead of a cell. And you? You chose to rot here for a principle nobody will remember. The steel door slams shut behind her. The sound echoes through the visiting room like a gunshot in a cathedral. She never comes back. 2 years crawl by like wounded animals. 2017. Raymond is 72 years old now. Heart condition requiring daily medication. Diabetes eating his nerves one cell at a time. Kidneys failing like old machinery breaking down. His body is a crumbling prison inside a concrete one. A lawyer, Raymond, barely remembers meeting files for compassionate release. Medical documentation thick as a phone book. X-rays showing a heart held together by scar tissue and stubbornness. Blood work revealing organs shutting down like lights going out in an abandoned building. The parole board meets in a gray room with gray people making gray decisions about lives painted in black and white. 5 faces behind a wooden table reviewing 44 years of silence. They flip through his file. Model prisoner. No violence, no infractions, no trouble. Just an old man who drove cars and kept secrets and chose loyalty over everything else. The chairwoman, steel-haired and stone-faced, adjusts her reading glasses. She looks at Raymond in his wheelchair, oxygen tank beside him like a faithful dog. Mr. Raymond, she says, you've served 44 years for non-violent offenses. Your medical condition qualifies you for compassionate release. But the government remains interested in the Swiss bank account referenced in your original case. The room goes silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the whisper of Raymond's oxygen machine. If we grant this release, she continues, will you cooperate with the Department of Justice to recover the funds in question? Different decade. Same hunger. The system still wants that ghost money more than it wants justice. Still believes that $11 million matters more than one man's word. Raymond looks at the 5 faces waiting for salvation. He thinks about the Bible in the evidence locker. He thinks about the river in the Bronx. He thinks about Frank's gun pressed against his head and the choice he made in that moment to say yes to whatever came next. I can't help you, Raymond says. The gavel comes down like thunder. Parole denied. Raymond wheels himself back to his cell, on bad wheels, and a clear conscience. Today, Raymond is 73 years old. Each breath costs more than the last. Heart medication keeps him alive one day at a time. Dialysis twice a week keeps his blood clean enough to function. The prison doctor gives him 18 months, maybe 2 years if he's unlucky enough to linger. And somewhere across an ocean, in a Swiss bank that operates like a machine built from money and silence, that account sits in digital purgatory. Banking laws are clear. After 30 years of inactivity, dormant accounts are absorbed by the institution or seized by government authorities. The $11 million Raymond protected with his life has likely evaporated into the cold machinery of international finance. The money is gone, disappeared, returned to the void from which it came. But Raymond never cared about the money. The money was never the point. The point was the test. The choice, the moment when a nobody from Red Hook was handed something more valuable than cash, the opportunity to prove that some things can't be bought, bullied, or begged away. Frank Lucas died in 2019. He died famous, but he died a rat. He died knowing he broke the one rule he preached. The loud man who became silent too late. Raymond is still alive. Still in a cage. Still owns nothing but the clothes on his back and the number in his head. But in the mythology of the streets, in the whispers that echo through prison corridors, in the stories that hustlers tell their children about what loyalty really costs, Raymond is a giant. He is the man who couldn't be bought, the man who couldn't be broken, the man who beat the system by refusing to play its game. In an evidence locker in Lower Manhattan, inside a cardboard box marked with a case number from 1975, a black leather Bible gathers dust. King James Version. Gold trim faded to brown, pages yellow with age, and the sweat of men who thought they could bargain with God and the government simultaneously. Inside, written in the margins of Psalm 23, 16 digits in pencil are slowly fading away. The valley of the shadow of death, annotated with a key that no longer opens anything except old wounds and older promises. The number is worthless now. The account is probably gone. The treasure map leads to an empty field. But the legend, the choice, the story of a nobody who became somebody by staying nobody, that's the real inheritance Frank Lucas left behind. Raymond will die in prison. Probably soon, heart giving out or kidneys failing or just time collecting its final debt. He'll take that 16-digit number to his grave, not because Frank Lucas deserves that kind of loyalty. Frank proved he didn't deserve anything. Raymond keeps the secret because he's loyal to the man he chose to become 44 years ago in a concrete interrogation room when they offered him everything and he chose nothing. Because Frank Lucas, for all his hypocrisy and betrayal, taught him one true thing: the loud man dies. The silent man becomes legend. And legends don't need money. They don't need freedom. They don't need anything except the knowledge that when the final test came, when everything was on the line, when the whole world was watching, they kept their word. So ask yourself this question. Out there in a world that worships money and fame and loud men who die young, was Raymond a fool for letting $11 million disappear into Swiss banking bureaucracy? Or was he the last honest man in a kingdom built on lies? You tell me, if you had that Bible in your hands, that number burned into your memory, that choice staring you in the face, what would you do? Would you take the money and run? Would you break under pressure and sing for your freedom? Or would you do what Raymond did? Choose silence, choose loyalty, choose to become a legend that nobody sees but everybody remembers. The loud man dies. The silent man lives forever. And in the end, that's the only throne that matters. The one inside yourself. The one nobody can take away.